Okay.
Are you ready for rapid fire?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's jump into the first one here, if I can find my sheet. So, after seeing Notre Dame score a total of 35 points in the last 2 weeks combined against Ohio State and Duke, a lot of people concerned about the offense. And we've talked about the offense a little bit in the first part of the mailbag. Scale of 1 to 10, what is your concern with Notre Dame's offense going forward?
6. And I'm not concerned with the offense moving forward against Louisville, against Clemson, or the rest of the ACC schedule. But I'm looking for Marcus Freeman to take this program to the next level. And what we've seen in the playoffs, you have to be able to score points against good teams to win games in the college football playoff. So the litmus test for me was Ohio State. They had opportunities. They had 2 fourth downs. They didn't convert. They left plenty of points on the field. They had an opportunity, in my opinion, to score anywhere from 24 to 30 points against Ohio State. They just weren't aggressive enough, in my opinion. Now you go to Duke, and as I said before, they left points on the field just from drop passes and penalties and it being inefficient. So my concern is really not about whether or not they can be the prolific offense that we saw at the start of the season. I believe that offense, especially against ACC teams, is going to show up. For me, the challenge is Jared Parker in big games, like against Ohio State, not being passive and being aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
You have to come out, you have to be aggressive, and you have to take opportunities to go against the grain and not do things that people expect you to do. You talked about it. First down. Hey, throw the ball. Throw the ball. Go against your trend.
Right.
And and then you put the other team on their heels. Those are the type of things that I'm looking for. So the USC game is very, because as good as our defense is, Caleb Williams is going to put some points on the board. As good as Notre Dame's defense is, USC is going to score more than 20, 24, 20. They have a chance to get to 30. Their offense is that good.
Right.
But Notre Dame has a chance to score 40 against that USC defense. So
I agree.
that for me will be the next litmus test to see whether or not this offense can take the next step and can be trusted to score points in big games.
Yeah, my concern level is pretty low. It's actually like down around it too, because I think I touched on this a little bit earlier. Ohio State's got the number 2 scoring defense in the country. Duke's got the number 7 scoring defense in the country. These were not slouch defenses they were going against. And like, even though, has Notre Dame been effective running the ball most of the season? Yeah. Mike Elko's a really good defensive mind, though. Duke did a Notre Dame, I just saw a graphic, I think, going into last weekend about Notre Dame uses pulling guards. They're like one of the top 5 teams in the country in terms of how Parker has pulled the guards this year. Mike Elko did a great job of taking that away. They would not let Notre Dame get to that. Again, I think the biggest thing comes down to, can Jared Parker be the guy who can make those adjustments as the game went on? The unbalanced line against NC State goes to the top of the line in terms of things weren't working the way they wanted. Hey, let's do this. Yeah. They came out, boom, they hit them with it. They used it a couple more times. Didn't have an 80-yard run, after that, but they were still successful with it. Can he adjust as the game goes on and not just go off this script? Because I think that young coaches in general, like, they definitely have this plan in their brain. We saw it with Tommy Rees. Yeah. He obviously had a plan of what he wanted. His big adjustment was the scan stuff, standing at the line of scrimmage, wanting to move guys around based on what the defense was giving him and stuff like that. You got to be able to adjust as the game goes along, and I think that's going to be the biggest thing. But as you just said, none of the defenses they're going to see as somebody said, Clemson is not going to be a pushover. I'm not looking past Clemson at all. But none of the defenses that they're going to play the rest of the season are going to be nearly as good as the 2 they just got done playing. So I'm not concerned.
Not at all. Not at all.
North Carolina State is changing quarterbacks. They're going from Brennan Armstrong to MJ Morris.
Mm-hmm.
Does that change the way at all that you think about Notre Dame's win over North Carolina State when you see a quarterback getting benched a couple weeks later?
No, because going into the Notre Dame game, we knew how bad Brennan Armstrong was. He puts the ball in harm's way consistently. He's done it
did
at
it
his
in that
previous
game.
stops.
Yeah.
He did it in that game. You knew that was going to happen. And Notre Dame didn't get they had one sack toward the end of the game. I think Donovan Hinish ended up getting that one sack, but they pressured him and they got him off his mark. And when you do that, he's going to turn the ball over. My concern in that game was how the offense would fare against a very good front seven for North Carolina State.
Yeah.
And like you said, that was one of the examples where the staff, when they had the weather break, went into the locker room and made the necessary adjustments. And then the offense came out and they were very efficient and they put points on the board. So for me, I think it's more of, I think North Carolina State feels like, well, they were up double digits against Louisville. And Brennan Armstrong just kept making mistakes, you know? So they really feel like they've probably lost 2 or 3 games because of his mistakes. But it doesn't change the way I feel about that win. I think with either quarterback, Notre Dame would have found a way to put points up and to keep the points for North Carolina State down.
Yeah, and I mean, he wasn't playing horribly at that point. Granted, it was still relatively early in the season for them because they had one less game than Notre Dame, but he had played solid the first couple of games. And I think that, with the whole Robert and I reunion and all that stuff, obviously they were expecting to get a lot more out of Brennan Armstrong. But the key is what you talked about. That's still, I mean, look at what NC State's defense did to Louisville. Like we were talking about the explosives that Louisville has, and look what NC State's defense did to them. Like Notre Dame did a much better job against North Carolina State's defense than Louisville did last week. And I think that was the biggest part of that whole thing is the what Notre Dame was ultimately, again, as you just mentioned, that's like the good from Jared Parker in terms of his ability to make adjustments. We need to see more of that Jared Parker going forward. But because of what Notre Dame was ultimately able to do, especially in the second half against that defense, you can't take that away from Notre Dame. So no, it doesn't change the way I feel about it either.
Yeah, and you have to feel really good about that win still, in my opinion, because of the weather.
Yeah.
The break.
You're on the road.
You're on the road.
The whole thing.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, your freshman, that was their first road test.
Right.
In that environment. So there are a lot of things that I think shows that might still be the most impressive win on the schedule, in my opinion. Like I understand the Duke game was what it was because of the emotions of the Ohio State game, but just both sides of the ball playing really well. That against a really good team, I think that was pretty impressive. I still would have been impressed regardless of Brennan Armstrong starting at the quarterback position.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So Isaiah Foskey led the Irish with 11 sacks last season. Isaiah's gone, as we all know. Do you buy or sell Notre Dame's top 2 sack leaders, combining for at least that many by the time this season is over?
No, I don't. and the reason I say that, I'm going to lean on what I'm hearing from the man in charge, who is every time he gets the opportunity, he's telling us he's not worried about sacks. He just wants pressure and pass efficiency for his defense to stay where it's at. That's what he keeps saying. So if the coaching staff is not focused on getting sacks and getting the quarterbacks on the ground, how can I expect the players to play with that urgency and try to get quarterbacks on the ground? I mean, it starts at the top and it rolls downhill. It doesn't seem like it's a top priority. So no, I don't think they will reach that 11 sack mark.
I think it's going to be, I mean, like the team has 9 right now. And as you know, it's like we're looking at it and we'd like to see more sacks and all that kind of stuff. You do have to take into account, the Navy was still a factor in there. They have played Navy. You've played some of these mobile quarterbacks, so that factors as well. But I mean, Botello is the leader right now with 2, and then you've got 6 guys with 1, and then Leafau and John Baptiste each split a sack last week, so it's just like it again, with the level of competition they're playing, maybe we see an uptick in sacks in general, but I just don't see a couple of guys really just, like going off the charts unless, somebody like Howard Cross, for example, has some big game. And I wonder as well, because of what Howard Cross is doing, and give it up right now for a nose guard to be leading the team in tackles, by the way, with 35. How about that? The most tackles for any interior defensive lineman in the nation right now. But I think that will have some ripple effects across the rest of the line as well, in terms of how teams are going to have to try to block him, and what can that do, what that can do for some other guys and potentially freeing them up and maybe giving them some opportunities. How can Al Golden kind of capitalize on that? But I still don't think that they get, two guys end up combining to get to at least.
Look, I'll tell you one game where they better focus on getting the quarterback down, and that's USC.
Yep.
Because they saw last year, they put tremendous pressure on Caleb Williams in the first half, and he just ran around and made plays. You have to get him on the ground. However you want to keep him,
pure and simple. Yeah.
Keep him inside the end and the tackle box and get him on the ground. Because if you let him get outside, more than likely he's going to make a play.
Yeah. I actually think they're going to get some sacks this weekend.
I hope they do.
Yeah.
Well, like we talked about Jack Plummer, he's like a statue back there.
Yeah,
so
exactly. They sacked him. I think we started off the show talking about they sacked him 6 times last year when he was at Cal. Louisville, and somebody TD4ND said, "How do you pronounce Louisville? How do you say it? Are you a Louisville guy?" I'm a Louisville.
I like to say it the way they say it in Kentucky, and I think I don't know if I can do it, but I think it's Louisville with their little twang. It's not Louis. They don't say Louis or Louis.
Right.
So I like the way they say it. I really do.
Yep. I'm going to go ahead and throw a Notre Dame question or two in here. Mr. 2.0, did you hear the Paul Burmeister calls from this past weekend? I'd be okay with him in the booth for TV. I've said that all along. I said it all along that they should have just moved Paul Burmeister over there. The guy's got a ton more experience. He's got TV experience. He's obviously got the radio experience as well. He filled in. I thought he did a good job when he filled in on TV and that first home game. I would be completely down with that as well.
Love Paul Burmeister and the ultimate homer.
Yeah.
Our guy.
Ryan Harris. The whoops and the hollers. They're not going to let him in a TV booth.
No.
Unfortunately. But I'd be down with that as well. So Alabama plays Texas A&M this weekend. They're also going to face Arkansas and Tennessee this month. Now, what's significant about that? A loss to any of those 3 teams would give Nick Saban 2 losses before the end of the month of October for the first time since his first season in Tuscaloosa back in 2007. So, do you buy or sell Alabama winning all 3 of those games, Sean?
I'm not going to doubt Nick Saban. I understand. I watched him against the USF. I understand the deficiencies at the quarterback position. They made a mistake, in my opinion, going away from Jalen Milroe when they did. I know he lost at home to Texas, but he put up 24 points. The other quarterbacks weren't ready. So at this point, they have to go back to old school Alabama football. Control the line of scrimmage, run the ball a lot, try to make a couple of good plays in the passing game down the field. And that defense is finally starting to play at the level that we expected it to play at. The Texas game is starting to look like an aberration, when they're going up against these SEC teams. But I don't think they'll face another SEC team other than maybe LSU offensively that can equal the offensive firepower that they saw against Texas. So I think Max Johnson is because of injury, he's going to get the start this weekend for A&M. A&M, it's at A&M, correct? Because they almost beat Bama at Bama last year.
Yes.
So I think it's at A&M. and they beat Alabama the last time that they came down to
Right.
the home of the 12th man. So I think it's going to be a really close game, hotly contested, and if he can, I don't think they win all three, but I definitely think they beat Tennessee because I think physically they're just going to control that game against Tennessee because I saw Florida do that against Tennessee. Arkansas, in my opinion, just doesn't have the horses.
Right.
So A&M has the best chance.
I think so as well. I think that A&M, I think that this is a really interesting game this weekend. Like their only loss, Texas A&M's only loss is to Miami, who's still playing. Miami hasn't played a great schedule other than A&M, but we'll find out more about them. I think they play North Carolina here in a couple of weeks. But I agree. I've never been sold on Milton, for Tennessee, and he's been very inconsistent so far. They're definitely not going to be as physical. They're not as explosive as they were last year, and they're not going to be as physical as Alabama. I think that A&M has the chance, to be that team that can more than match Alabama's physicality. But, because like you talk about a coach who's got to get it together, and that's Jimbo down there. I think things are on the line, and this could really be kind of a resurgence for Jimbo Fisher if they can win this game this weekend. I think of the three, this is the best chance. But when I look at these three, I don't think I'm sold that they're definitely going to lose all three. So I'm going to sell it for right now. But I do think that this like of the three, I think that this one's got the best chance.
And Texas A&M, by the way, whose defense has been really good other than that Miami game. If you look at their front four, you see all the 5 stars. And even though they were 5 stars, what it shows you is that these kids still need time to develop.
Right. Exactly.
Because what we were complaining about, the production they weren't getting the previous 2 years, now all of a sudden, all of these kids on that front four are making plays. And that just goes to show you, I don't care how many stars a kid has, that does not denote what it's going to take for them to get on the field and to produce at the level that we expect them to produce at. Every kid is different. Every recruit is different.
Yep. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Deion Sanders says he wouldn't want a lifetime contract if he was offered it. He was asked about this week.
Honest. It's honest. I know a lot of people fall on different sides of the coin when it comes to Deion Sanders. The one thing that I respect about Deion Sanders is that he is who he is. He is who he is. And in doing that, he's going to rub some people the wrong way. And in doing that, some people are going to love what he does. But no, I don't think he's very much, and this is going back to Jackson State, why he went there and why he said he ended up in Colorado. He's a man of God. He felt like he heard from God to go to both of these places. And, I believe he's probably at Colorado for a certain season. So in that stead, with him believing that, no, why would he accept a lifetime contract when he knows that, or he expects another season to come where he's going to be moving on to somewhere else because he feels like that's what God is going to tell him to do. So that's the way he's operated in the past. And I think he's going to continue to operate like that.
Yeah. I mean, he's still, especially, for being a head football coach, he's still very young. Why would anyone in his situation want to take a lifetime contract? It's
absolutely.
He's breathed new life into Colorado. But he said, he said something about his mom taught him, which way the fan blows, can change and stuff like that, in typical Deion fashion. But you're exactly right. Like you signed that lifetime contract and then a couple years down the road, something happens. And, why would he want to get into a commitment and then break that commitment just a couple years down the road? And like from Colorado's standpoint, why would they want to give him a lifetime contract?
And think about it, Sean. Think about everything that's transpired since he took the job. He took the job. USC and UCLA went to the Big Ten. Then you had other programs from the Pac-12 go to other conferences. So now what he initially walked into as a conference,
completely different. Just
it's
like with
completely
Lincoln Riley.
different.
Look at Lincoln
Yeah.
Riley. Like
Yeah.
he thought he was, getting out of the Big 12
Big
and going to
12.
the Pac-12, and he was going to be there, and it didn't even take a year.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to the not even like it took a matter of months. Actually, I don't think he had even coached a game before USC made that announcement last year. So yeah, it's things can change in a hurry. And like TD for ND says, is Deion going to the NFL? I mean, I don't get the feeling that that's what he wants to do. He seems like he's really set on college, but he's going to be in demand. He's going to get a lot of interest from the NFL, I think.
He's good for college football. There are certain people that look, he's good for college football. Jim Harbaugh is good for college football, in my opinion. You know why? Because they bring in both sides of the equation.
Right.
To the party. They bring the people that can't stand them.
Right.
And they bring the people that love them.
And that's why like people are talking about, oh, you keep blowing up this Deion stuff.
Absolutely.
Every Colorado game, like think about, nobody watched Colorado football for the last 15 or 20 years. No. They were not a hot commodity in terms of a TV product, an attendance product, in terms of anything. But every game so far, that noon game last week, Colorado and USC, I think the rating was like 7.5 million people was the average audience. That's a noon game for Colorado USC. That was 2 million more than watched Notre Dame Duke last week. Think about that in prime time.
All of their games have broken Pac-12 viewing records.
Yeah.
And that's in itself.
And I mean, the Big 12 amazing. Is Brett Yormark is sitting there going, yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy.
Absolutely. You know they are. So they're good. I think Marcus Freeman is good for college football. We have a lot of young coaches that are really good for the future of college football as it moves forward. Really good.
Yep. Fill in the blank. The Chase Claypool situation with the Chicago Bears is blank. And this is obviously very close to home for you. What do you think about this whole thing?
It's a teaching lesson to all athletes. If you're not the best player or the quarterback on the team, you can't say that.
My thoughts exactly.
He said the same thing Justin Fields said a week prior.
Yep.
Justin Fields had just answered the same question
Yep.
and answered it the exact same way. Justin Fields just happens to be the quarterback. Chase Claypool, and he had fallen out of favor a little bit with the coaching staff with a lack of effort against the Green Bay Packers. He caught a touchdown that following week against Tampa Bay, and he felt like he was starting to get into a groove, and he got trapped. He allowed himself to get trapped by the media, asking that question, and he should have just, I understand. See, this is what I think I said. I tweeted this out. I said, I understand that the media and fans soak up players being PC when they answer questions. And you feel like, well, that might be the case, but you shouldn't have said that, right? That's not being a team player. Look, these players, they go out to dinner and they talk. These conversations are happening. Regardless of whether or not it's said in front of the camera, the conversations are happening. I guarantee you, Chicago Bears players are sitting there talking to each other about how bad Matt Eberflus and the staff have been. They're talking about it.
Right.
So we can ask, would you rather the athlete be honest and answer the question, or would you rather him just continue to be PC and the real conversation stay in the background amongst the players?
Yeah. And I guess, like maybe we should appreciate Ryan Day for going off the way he did after the game, just because he could have taken the PC approach, but he gave us all something to talk about for a week.
It was his honest feelings, right?
Right.
He eventually apologized, but it was his honest feelings. Lou Holtz gave his honest opinion.
Right.
About Ohio State.
And that's what, most of these, just like Sean Payton's words are coming back to bite him right now when he went after Nathaniel Hackett the way he did, but he gave a true opinion rather than playing, giving a vanilla answer on the whole thing. you know?
Absolutely.
And
So,
was it
and
a
I
little bit
think,
arrogant? Maybe, sure. But again, he gave a true, honest opinion. And like, I think that's all you can ask for, really. But you're absolutely right. Like, if it was Aaron Rodgers, Justin Jefferson, someone of that stature, it's handled completely differently. But when you're in Chase Claypool's situation,
last year
what you're
contract.
putting on film is what you're putting on film, and it ain't good.
Nope.
And you're saying that kind of stuff, it's not going to work out well for you.
Yeah, like you said, they're not sending Justin Jefferson home.
That's right.
For the weekend. No, they wouldn't do that.
That's exactly right. A couple that I wanted to slip in here.
Okay.
This whole Pat McAfee thing. Salty asking about Pat McAfee recently picked a fight with Washington State's fan base on game day. Does this degrade game day or make it more relevant to a younger audience? And I know a lot of people kind of went after McAfee, and like some of the stuff that he said probably did cross the line. But I did actually catch part of his show. I think it was yesterday. And he said he had gotten, he's obviously got a lot of Washington State fans coming after him. His biggest thing was they were going after Lee Corso for what Lee Corso said. And he didn't feel like it was appropriate to be going after an 88-year-old man, especially for, like, I think that Corso's comments were twisted a little bit by the Washington State head coach with some of the stuff that he said. But McAfee did apologize because he said, like, apparently the Washington State fan, like the ones that he's hearing from were truly, concerned that their program might cease to exist because of what's going on out there with, in the Pac-12 and all that stuff, so like he did apologize. I do think that he crossed a line on game day, so I don't, but at the same time, he said he was doing it in defense of Lee Corso, which I can understand.
Yeah, I don't even have to deal with that incident. And I totally agree with everything you said. For me, watching game day has been kind of difficult as someone that grew up with it as a teenager until this point, the tradition of it. And I understand that Lee Corso was on his last leg, with his health concerns and everything. But, him making his pick at the end is still one of the greatest things that give you a big laugh going into the 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock games. It just is. And the Pat McAfee thing, I'm going to be honest with you, Sean, I've struggled with it a little bit. I understand why they made the move. I understand his popularity right now and the energy he brings to the show. Amongst the other guys that are like really chill, Kurt's really chill, Desmond's really chill. He does bring a different energy that kind of like solicits the younger CFB fan.
Right.
So I understand the business behind it, but Bear had been a fixture. Now he's on Fox. Now they have Stanford Steve on. So it's just been a lot of changes, and I've really been trying to get used to it and enjoy it. But, Pat says pretty much every weekend, Pat says some pretty wild things on the show.
And that's, like Stymie says, he's literally a pro wrestler, and he's worked for WWE and done some of that. He knows how to work the heel character. And I will say this, because like when Vince and I talked about him early in the season, like Vince's impression of Pat McAfee is what he sees on game day. And the character that I think that he is portraying on game day, it is definitely a souped up version of what you get of Pat McAfee during the Pat McAfee show. They're like, it's two different things. And I had never really seen the Pat McAfee show until they launched this thing on ESPN at the start of the football season. That's when they did it. And I've been watching it more, and there's definitely a difference. Like I said, he sort of heightens and plays up that, if you want to call him the pro wrestling heel or whatever on game day, that's a different Pat McAfee than the guy that you see on his weekday show, the Pat McAfee show.
I know he did one thing that I thought last week was a tad bit disrespectful. They were doing, they go before the board and answer questions, one segment every show. And they were doing that, and Mike Elko was off on the side getting ready to join them to be interviewed. And so one of the questions was, who's the next head coach of Michigan State. And Pat McAfee turns around and points to Mike Elko. And I just felt like this is Duke Notre Dame. Like, this is a big weekend. Don't do that to him.
Yeah.
Don't connect him to that Michigan State job like that. Michigan State probably will come after him and probably will throw a bag at him. He more than likely, he probably takes it. But with him getting ready to come on and interview with you guys and talk about the game, and then he has to coach, that don't connect that to him. I felt like it was unfair to Coach Elko. But that's just Pat McAfee being him.
Right.
He's just being him. And I felt like, okay, you're being funny or you're trying to be funny, but I don't know if Mike Elko likes that.
I mean, Crystal does make a good point. He is the one guy that acts like he's excited to be, but
oh, absolutely.
Those other guys have been doing it for a long time.
For a long time. So it's a paycheck
different
for them. Yeah, it's definitely a paycheck for the other guys to this point. Yeah. And I think that's what they saw. Like, we need somebody to bring the energy. And he's definitely full of energy each and every Saturday.
For sure. Mark brought this question is, does it surprise you networks pay millions to some of their commentators like Tony Romo? I know you complain about the commentators, but never heard of watching a game because of the broadcast team, especially with the NFL. The NFL has approval over who's going to be in these number one booths. And they want, like, the big thing is you want credibility. It's not that you're tuning in to watch the game. You want credibility and at least perceived big game, big booth, big announcer feel when you tune into what is supposed to be, like a national game, whether it's a Super Bowl, a playoff, or just the primetime windows that they have. And when you're selling this product to advertisers, you've got to have that kind of feel. And that's why these guys get the money. It's not that people are necessarily tuning in for the announcers, but when you tune in for these big games, you've got to have credibility and a big name feel in that booth.
And to be honest, now that I'm older, I focus a little bit more on the nuances of broadcasting and what's being said. But as a kid, I still to this day, Sean, I can hear Vern Lundquist in my ear.
Right.
Still to this day, I can still hear Mr. Jackson saying "Whoa, Nelly" in my ear.
Right.
It's like it's the feel they give you about the game. They make you believe that this is a big game. Mike Tirico is the same. They give you a feeling.
Yeah. John Madden, with the
John
Slava knockers.
Absolutely. So for me, if they can do that, if the commentator, if they can do that for you and make the game that you're watching more of an experience, so you're not really focused on whether or not the color analyst is breaking it down the way you see it or you agree or disagree, just enjoy it because it should be an experience. That's what the great ones do. They make the game you're watching an experience.
Yep. Completely agree. And that's why Buck and Aikman got all that. I mean, look at all the talk for years after, was it? I'm trying to think of which booth was which. Basically, the Monday Night Football booth for years was just a train wreck. Mm-hmm. And, you had Tirico. He was good, but, he was with Gruden. People were, in and out on Gruden. So I'm not saying that Tirico was a train wreck by any means, but most of the talk really for the last 15, 20, maybe even more years was like, what's wrong with the Monday Night Football booth? They can't get the Monday Night Football booth right. Well, they went out, they spent the money. First they got Troy Aikman, and then Joe Buck followed. They're spending a lot of money for that booth, but the Monday night booth right now, you could argue that it's the best that it's ever been, but at the very least, it's the best that it's been in 20 plus years.
You got the best combo in the biz.
Right.
And that's, I actually think people complain about Kirk Herbstreit. In my opinion, Kirk Herbstreit is better on the Thursday NFL package than he is in college football. Because I think it's something fresh and new for him.
Right.
Whereas college football, he's been doing it.
I think he's
Like you
good.
said,
And I'm not saying Al Michaels is bad, but like
right.
they haven't really gelled yet.
Yeah, they
I
haven't
think.
jailed yet. I definitely would agree with that. Al Michaels is another one that, and not just football, just Al Michaels has done it in so many different sports, like the Olympics and
Absolutely.
boxing. And
Yep. Last one tonight. This is for you specifically from David. What is the best kind of cookie and why is it oatmeal?
I love you, David. I love you, a man after my own heart. Oatmeal raisin is always the best. Always. It's just, you get the oats, the taste of the oats, then the raisins. And then if you have the right amount of like cinnamon and oatmeal raisin is
little
undefeated.
molasses kind of in there. And yeah,
Molasses.
it's like,
Well said, Sean. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, chocolate chip, this is the way I feel. Oatmeal raisin, no matter where I go, is a more consistent cookie. Chocolate chip is hit or miss, in my opinion, because it depends upon the way it's made. There are some great Insomnia cookies make fantastic chocolate chunk cookies. Fantastic, right? I don't know if they have one in the South Bend area because they're usually located next to universities and colleges all across the country. So we have one here next to the University of Chicago in Hyde Park. But Insomnia Cookies makes fantastic chocolate chip cookies. Nestle has a good chocolate chip cookie in the mall every now and then.
I tell you, I agree. The oatmeal raisin cookie gets a bad rap when they are like fresh and like little moist, like a little bend to them. They don't have to be hot necessarily, but I do really like a good oatmeal raisin cookie. My favorite though is the Blondies out at the mall, the sugar cookie with the icing on it, with like basically like the birthday cake icing on the sugar cookie.
Yeah.
Very soft. That is my absolute favorite. Those things melt in your mouth. I love those things.
That's your favorite cookie?
That's my favorite cookie by far. That's right.
Yeah. Insomnia has a lemon white chocolate that is only available close to Easter.
Okay. Where is Insomnia? I've heard of that place. Is that the one? Like that's like a big city place, right?
No, they literally put them. The first one I went to was in Connecticut on the Yale campus.
Okay.
And then I came back to Chicago and found out that they had one connected to the University of Chicago campus. So they connect them to universities and colleges. And that's why I asked if I was like, they must have one in South Bend around the university, but I guess not. But you can do a search on Google, Insomnia Cookies.
I've heard of that place, but I don't think I've ever been to one. So
it's fantastic.
Which is kind of surprising because my wife is one of those people, like anytime we go someplace, she's always looking for, like what's the cupcake place? What's the cookie place with like the fancy stuff, all that stuff. Terry Tyler says Crumble Cookie is fire. They've got some pretty solid cookies.
They have some, but they sometimes Crumble does a little bit too much.
I think so too.
Too much on top of the cookie.
Keep it simple. That's
absolutely.
That's right. Well, that is going to do it for tonight. Sean, had a blast being here with you again. We've gone for almost an hour and a half. We were just on a roll there.
It's always a joy when we're together. Always a joy when I'm with you, man.
That's right. All right. Thanks again, Sean, for doing it. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Be sure you hit that like button on your way out. And, of course, subscribe, rate, review. What'd you see there?
Someone said they do have it in South Bend.
The Insomnia?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to have to look that up. I'm going to have to talk to my wife about that.
Fantastic.
My birthday's coming up next week, so maybe I'll try some Insomnia. So
you got big plans? Just a steak dinner and
breakfast. Breakfast has become our birthday tradition. Sunday morning breakfast, like around the birthday weekend. So
a man after my own heart. I'm a breakfast guy. I can eat it 24 hours of the day.
That's right. I haven't had biscuits and gravy in a while, so I'm gonna have to hit some of
Ooh.
that this weekend. I'm
Are
looking
you gonna
forward
have
to
like
it.
little bits of sausage in the gravy?
Of course.
Oh, that's the best.
I know.
Oh,
I
Sean,
know.
you might have to send me an invite.
My
I
stomach
might
is
have to
rumbling
join.
right. I might have to. Thank you very much, Derek. Thank you very much, Tom. It's next Monday if you guys want to get me anything. I'm just saying.
First of all, we have to get you a win Saturday night. How about that?
That's right. That's the start. That's the start right there.
Sorry, right there.
All right. Have a good one, Sean. I will talk to you hopefully again soon.
Absolutely.
All right. Subscribe, rate, review, hit the like button, and we will talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.